Well, it's very likely that you're probably thinking about the relapse entirely wrong. You're probably beating yourself up about it way more than you should. I want to explain some things about the relapse on semen retention. And in this video, I'll probably make you feel a lot better about it. It doesn't mean that relapses are okay or anything that you should aim for or take lightly or, just be like, F it. I'm a relapse all over the place. It's not really like that, but it's probably not nearly as bad as you think. And I don't even think we really need to, like, this whole streak thing, like unbroken streak thing. I mean, I get it for like, the streak is for how long it's been since you've, ejaculated. Um, but it doesn't really mean that all the benefits that you accrued during that streak go to zero. Like, yes, your streak goes to zero in terms of unbroken days, but everything else does not go to zero at all. And I'll explain that in this video. But so I relapsed just recently after a 56-day streak, which was my longest at the time. I've been doing this for like 11 months, and definitely had a lot of relapses along the way, but some good like 30-day streaks, multiple 30-day streaks in there, sometimes longer. Streaks of 2 weeks, 20 days, all that stuff, right? Um, but this last relapse, and then I just had another relapse yesterday. So we have two relapses within like 2 or 3 days or something like that. I was like, I was trying to make myself feel better, right? So I go on the internet and I'm like, how much? Because it made me curious. I was like, how much semen is lost in one ejaculation? And I had seen something before that said 2 weeks, which is crazy because I researched it a lot today, and everything that I found didn't say 2 weeks at all. It didn't even say like a time span. If you look at how much, it wasn't necessarily how much semen, it was how much sperm are ejaculated in one ejaculation. How much sperm, right? Um, it said that the average ejaculation has between like, I think it was 40 million and 250 million, depending on your age and your health and all that stuff. So I just took the average, like, I've seen some as high as 300 million sperm per ejaculation. So, I was looking at that. And so, like, I just give sort of a high average. I'm just taking like a high average, let's say 250, right? Or 200. Let's just say 200 million sperm on average that you release in an ejaculate, right? Then I was looking at how much sperm you produce a day. How much sperm do you produce a day, right? And that number, from everything that I saw, and I researched all this like multiple times to make sure like the numbers were right and all the websites were sort of like matching up and correlating and agreeing with each other. That said, like anywhere from 70 million to I think it was like 150 million sperm that you make a day. It's roughly 1,500 a second, and there's 86,400 seconds in a day. I think that's a song. 86,400 seconds. But so that so take an average of like that 70,000 to 150, or 70 million to 150 million. You're looking at about roughly 100 million. So you're looking at roughly, by these numbers, in one ejaculation, you are getting rid of the sperm that you made over the course of 2 days. And let's be generous here. Let's just be generous for semen retention's sake and say that you're actually losing more than that. Let's say that you're losing 3 days. That's being generous, I think. But let's say that each ejaculation is 3 days, whole 3 days worth of sperm production, which I don't think is quite accurate, but we're being generous here. You see where I'm going with this, right? I mean, in one ejaculate, if you have a relapse, you're basically setting yourself back by sperm, like literally going off of how much sperm you've built up, right? Which is sort of, that's the correlation to the energy. If this is the sexual power, the power to create life, that's all comes from the sperm. That comes from the cell of the sperm, right? So like the sperm is really everything. It's not necessarily the semen, it's the sperm inside the semen. And that is what you get all this energy from. It's the life producing energy. And so when you withhold it, when you retain it, it builds up the organism, and you can divert it in different ways. And that's this sexual, sort of alchemy, sexual transmutation sort of thing. But I mean, if you relapse, you're judging by that, going off of that. Yes, your streak of like unbroken days since like relapsing or looking at porn or jerking off or whatever, if you're having sex or whatever. Yes, that goes back to zero. But in terms of how much energy did you lose? How much semen did you lose? What are you really, what's the toll that your body is taking? How much did you set yourself back in terms of like production? I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but from everything that I'm seeing out there, it only really makes sense that one ejaculation would set you back 3 days, which is, judging by most videos that you actually see out there, most people will say from an experiential standpoint, when you have a relapse, experientially, you don't feel like energy wise, like you're back at zero. You don't feel like you're back at square one. You maybe feel like a little dip. Like, I don't even feel, I've been doing this for 11 months, man. And when I have a relapse, like the other relapse that I just had, not the one yesterday, but the 2 days prior to that, I felt better. Like I felt better. Like I felt like less pressure, more peaceful, all that stuff. I felt like I had just as much energy. I still feel like I have just as much energy. I'm just as sharp. I handle stress just as better. I feel like I'm operating on the same sort of frequency, same level, same capacity. I feel like I have the same confidence, same sort of charisma. I don't feel like anything's really changed that much. I don't notice like a huge difference. And that is sort of, it's crazy that that sort of lines up like what you experience, how you feel experientially. It sort of matches up to the science of like how much sperm you're actually losing in one ejaculation versus how much you are building up per day. Because basically that means like you set yourself back 3 days, and then in 3 days you're going to build back up what you lost in that one ejaculation. So I don't really know what this whole thing about this streak is. I think that maybe we're all like beating ourselves up too much, which I think is, detrimental to this whole like thing. Um, Semen retention is not going to happen overnight. Like you conquering lust is not going to happen overnight. And I'm not just saying this because I had recent relapses, but it has given me, it's almost like I'm grateful that it happened, because I'm sort of viewing it a little differently now. I'm giving myself a little more space, and I'm being easier on myself. And I would have never known this whole like amount of sperm you produce in a day versus amount of sperm you lose in one ejaculation type thing if I hadn't had these most recent relapses. But yeah, I think we're just all beating ourselves up maybe a little too much about this. Everybody's super focused on the streak, super focused on like never losing your semen again, never ejaculating again. It's like, I think that's a bit unrealistic, at least when you're starting out. Like maybe if you've been doing this for a couple years, okay, maybe you'll be at that point. Maybe you'll just, lust won't even really have a hold over you. But for those of us who, the majority of us who have been dealing with this our entire lives, and, you've been Most of us ejaculate every single day of our lives, sometimes more than once a day. So, with the odd, day or two there where you're like super busy and you just didn't get time or whatever. But I think the key thing here is, you know, this is a gradual thing. It's better to just, I think you got to take the small wins. You should even be proud of yourself if you can go 5 days without ejaculating. If you can continuously put together what this means, really, based on like this sperm sort of math, the sperm math, if you can put together streaks of 5 days and then one relapse, 5 days streak, one relapse, 5 day streak, one relapse, then you're gaining like 2 days every, basically every week of like sperm buildup in your body. Like you're having more and more and more and more and more buildup by by 2 days per week, basically. So it's a net gain. Like it's a net storage positive of sperm in your body. Um, and this is definitely, you know, good. I mean, even just small wins like that, small streaks built up over time like that is way better than what we were all doing before, what our status quo was before we, got on the semen retention thing, which was likely ejaculating every single day or, every other day or something like that, which kind of puts you at just zero. Like you're always just kind of like empty. You're literally just kind of always empty, which kind of makes sense why like, you just have no energy and you kind of feel lost in life and depressed and anxious and all these things. And you're not really operating on a high level is just because literally like you're basically just, you got nothing in there. You got nothing in reserve. You got nothing in the stores. Um, and your body is just taking nutrients, all these nutrients and um, all these minerals and vitamins to make, to make the semen, and it's literally just like there's no semen getting built up, so it's just leaching off, to try to get some to continuously try to do this. I'm not exactly sure how the science works, but you feel it, right? This is more an experiential thing than like science thing, but it's undeniable in the experience. If you've done this for any decent amount of time, 2 months, 3 months, then you definitely know. Like you've witnessed the benefits. You know what this is about. But yeah, I would just say that this whole movement. I think it needs to be a little more like we should, sort of champion like little victories more. Just the fact that you're being more sexually disciplined, that's great. Just that. Just the fact that little by little you're conquering lust a little bit at a time. It's like little wins, you know what I mean? Like you don't have to conquer lust all in one night and just have it be this endless streak and never touch yourself again. It's, that's unrealistic and it's unhealthy. I think it's psychologically just like overwhelming, demotivating. You're just like, oh, there's no way. And like every streak that you have, if you have that mindset, every streak that you break by like relapsing, it's just like, oh my gosh, I just relapsed. I'm at zero. It's just like, that's just not a healthy way to think about this, I don't think. It's definitely not a healthy way to think about this. But, you know, doing this for 11 months, I've definitely relapsed like a lot, over that time period. Um, but I've had some good streaks in there. And I feel like that 11 months, this whole 11 months, like, if relapses were such a big thing, then I wouldn't really feel like I have the benefits that I do now. I wouldn't feel completely different now than I did when I started this thing. And that's the case. I feel completely different now than when I started this thing. Like the list, I mean, I've made previous videos about some of these things. It would be like a 45-minute video if I just went over like every single positive benefit that it's had in my life. But, that was all with like some relapses there all across those 11 months. So I just don't really believe that the relapse is so detrimental. It's more about, especially for your first year, I think. Your first year on this, it's about little wins, just being slowly like more sexually disciplined, going on longer streaks bit by bit, putting together a week streak here, 2 week streak there, and then maybe you can have, maybe it's just too much and you have to have some relapses there. That was the case with me. Maybe, just naturally you're inclined to just, you have more control over your lust. Like you're just not as inclined to be so, so sort of sexually driven or like, stirred or anything like that. In which case, you'll be able to put together longer streaks earlier and be better at this. But which probably oftentimes means that you won't see as much benefits as the guys who like really struggle with this. The guys that just they're just deep into lust and they're just, addicted to the female body, and, they ejaculate every day, whether it's with a woman or not. They're the ones that are going to see big benefits from this because the contrast is so big, from what they were doing to what they are now doing on semen retention. So I just think that the whole just this whole idea of like the relapse being so bad and like your goal is to like never relapse, especially when you're in your first year or two, like you need to be easy on yourself. You need to give yourself space on this thing. This is going to be a slow thing. It's not going to happen overnight. It'll likely happen over years that you'll sort of master this thing. And I think that's just key, just little wins, little victories. Like I did a 56-day streak and then I relapsed, 2 times within like 4 days. And, I just felt terrible. Like, not like, in like my energy levels or like my mind or anything like that, but like just the story I was telling myself, like sort of the narrative in your mind, your emotions, you're just kind of like beating yourself up about it. It's like, instead of me being like, yo, I just put together a 56-day streak. Like, that's amazing. 56 days? That's crazy. Most guys can't put together a week, So if you're putting together like decent streaks on this thing, and then you relapse, I just don't think that you need to beat yourself up about it. Just get back on the horse. You know what I mean? It's obviously not an excuse to just like, oh, relapses are great, let's relapse every day. Like, no, obviously you always have to strive to like, build this thing up, put together longer and longer streaks. But, you just have to have a healthy mindset about it. Don't be unrealistic about it. So yeah, I just think that if we're going off of like, again, going back to like the sperm math, if we're going off of that, you losing in one ejaculation 3 days worth of production of semen, a relapse in that sense, judging by those numbers, judging by the sperm math numbers, it really doesn't set you back too much. 3 days. So if you relapse 5 times, then you're set back 2 weeks. You know what I mean? So if you did a 56-day streak and you relapse 5 times, not saying that you should or that it's okay or like you should just have this mindset like, I'll just, whatever. I'm just saying that if you do, you're likely only going to be set back in terms of sperm buildup, and energy buildup 2 weeks. I think that's sort of definitely representative in your experience, how you will feel after you relapse. Because of all these relapses in the last 11 months that I've had, somehow I still feel like, again, this goes back to the point that I made, but like somehow I still feel like way better than when I started. Way better. Like leagues better. My life has changed quite dramatically just in those 11 months. So, despite those relapses, and quite a few of them. So, yeah, I'm not sure the relapse is quite as big of a deal as most in this community seem to think that it is. But again, this is saying it's not an excuse. It's not an excuse to just relapse and like oh yeah, we can just relapse here and relapse there, and relapses everywhere. Like, no, it's not like that. You still need to do your best on this thing, maintain as long as streaks as possible. You gotta put your all into this thing. You get back on the horse all the time, always show up to this thing, and you just let the chips fall where they may. A lot of the times it's just showing up. You showing up every single day and just never going away. You consciously thinking about this, it'll take care of itself. You know what I mean? In time, this thing will just kind of take care of itself. You won't really have to consciously do anything. As long as you just show up, you keep this sort of a priority. I feel like we're all winners at the end of the day. We're all gonna, you know, have a really good handle of lust and perhaps even conquer it completely, um, down the line. So, because that's the goal. Because lust is just, man, it's crazy, bro. Crazy, bro. Yeah. So don't beat yourself up. Sperm math don't lie. All right, that's the video.